Disclaimer: this video is a historical documentary created for educational purposes. All scenes are artistic reenactments based on documented events. No real violence is shown or promoted. July 28th, 1794. A cart is rattling through the streets of Paris, and on it is a prisoner unlike any other. His face is a ruin, wrapped in a blood-soaked bandage to hold his shattered jaw in place, making it impossible for him to speak. This is Maximilien Robespierre, the leading voice of the Reign of Terror, a man whose regime sent thousands to their deaths. The crowds that once called him the Incorruptible now scream curses. A woman breaks through the guards and shouts, "Monster spewed from hell." The thought of your punishment intoxicates me with joy. Just 24 hours earlier, he was the most powerful man in France. Now he's about to meet the very blade he made infamous, unable to speak a final word in his own defense. How did the Incorruptible meet such a swift and humiliating end? And what's the real story behind the mysterious injury that silenced him right before his own execution? To understand the chaotic, violent showdown that finally destroyed him, we have to go back and understand the man who tried to build a republic of virtue on a foundation of terror. Before the blood and before the guillotine, Maximilien Robespierre was a very different kind of man. He was a lawyer from the town of Arras who arrived in Paris in 1789 as an elected representative for the common people, the Third Estate. In those early hopeful days of the French Revolution, he was seen as a true champion of liberty. He was a passionate advocate for democratic ideals, arguing for the right of all men to vote and to bear arms. He even argued fiercely for the abolition of the death penalty, a stance that would become the ultimate bitter irony of his life. His colleagues and the public called him the Incorruptible. He was a man of simple habits, not driven by money or status, but by a rigid, unwavering belief in his principles. At a time of deep national crisis, with France at war with other European monarchies and torn apart by civil conflict, Robespierre's clear, uncompromising voice cut through the chaos. He saw the revolution as a battle for the soul of humanity, a chance to build a new society based on logic, reason, and civic virtue. But as the revolution grew more radical and more desperate, so did he. His idealism began to twist into something far more dangerous, and his quest for a perfect republic would lead him and France down a path of unimaginable violence. By 1793, the revolution was on a knife's edge. To save it from its enemies, both foreign and domestic, the government formed an emergency council, the Committee of Public Safety. Robespierre quickly became its most prominent and powerful member, and from this position he helped oversee the darkest chapter of the revolution. This was the beginning of the Reign of Terror, a period where the state itself became an instrument of death. Its stated goal was to purge France of counter-revolutionaries and enemies of liberty. In reality, it became a machine of paranoia and political extermination. Revolutionary tribunals were set up to prosecute suspected traitors, and the guillotine became a daily spectacle. During the Terror, around 17,000 people were officially executed. The Terror consumed people from every walk of life. Olympe de Gouges, a pioneering feminist, was executed for her political writings. But Robespierre's purges weren't just for ideological opponents. He turned on his own. Georges Danton, a charismatic and once popular revolutionary leader, argued for easing up on the Terror. For this, Robespierre accused him of corruption and conspiracy. Danton and his ally, Camille Desmoulins, were sent to the guillotine. The message was chillingly clear. No one was safe. Dissent, even from former friends, was a death sentence. The paranoia peaked in June 1794 with the Law of 22 Prairial. This terrifying law, written under Robespierre's guidance, stripped accused citizens of any real right to a defense. Suspects couldn't call witnesses, and the courts had only two options: acquittal or death. The law basically made suspicion itself a crime, stating that even rumor was enough to drag someone before the tribunal. In the 6 weeks after this law was passed, over 1,400 people were guillotined in Paris alone, more than during the entire previous year. The Great Terror had begun, and the city was suffocating in fear. Everyone was wondering who would be next. They wouldn't have to wonder for long. The end for Robespierre began on a sweltering day in Paris, July 26, 1794. He took the stage at the National Convention to deliver what would be his final speech. For 2 hours, he spoke of conspiracies and traitors, of a rot that had infested the Republic. He claimed he had a new list of enemies who had to be purged for the revolution to survive. But then, he made a fatal mistake. He refused to name them. In that moment, the air in the room turned to ice. Who was on this secret list? By not naming his targets, Robespierre made every single man in the hall a potential victim. His threat was no longer aimed at a specific group. It was aimed at everyone. That single act of paranoid overreach shattered whatever support he had left. Men who had been his allies, men who had helped him carry out the terror, now saw him as a direct threat to their own lives. The choice became terrifyingly simple. It was either him or them. Overnight, a desperate and unlikely coalition formed against him, made up of moderates, radicals, and even members of his own Committee of Public Safety. The next morning, Robespierre returned to the convention, likely expecting to secure his power. But when his ally, Saint-Just, tried to speak, he was immediately shouted down. A deputy named Jean Lambert Tallien, whose lover was in prison awaiting the guillotine, dramatically brandished a dagger and denounced Robespierre as a tyrant. The hall erupted into chaos. When Robespierre tried to speak, his voice was drowned out by a chorus of shouts. "Down with the tyrant! To the guillotine!" The man whose voice had commanded the revolution for years was now totally silenced. The convention, the very assembly he once dominated, quickly voted to arrest him and his closest followers. The Incorruptible was now a prisoner. But the arrest was just the beginning of a long, chaotic night. When Robespierre and his allies were taken to the city's prisons, the jailers, who were loyal to the powerful Paris Commune, refused to lock them up. Suddenly free, they fled to the Hôtel de Ville, the city hall, hoping to rally their supporters for a counterattack. In response, the convention took a final, drastic step. They declared Robespierre and his followers outlaws. This was effectively a death sentence. As an outlaw, he could be executed without a trial. All that was needed was a formal identification. Around 2 a.m., troops loyal to the convention stormed the Hôtel de Ville. What followed was pure chaos. Gunshots echoed through the halls. Robespierre's younger brother tried to escape through a window, but fell and shattered his legs. Another ally shot himself in the head, choosing suicide over capture. And in the middle of this mayhem, Robespierre suffered the catastrophic injury that would define his final hours. Here, history splits into two stories. The first is that a gendarme named Charles-André Merdat burst into the room, aimed his pistol, and shot Robespierre in the face. The second theory is that Robespierre, seeing it was all over, tried to kill himself, but, with a trembling hand, only managed to destroy his jaw. To this day, no one knows for sure what really happened. The architect of the terror was found on the floor, bleeding profusely, his lower jaw hanging loose. He was dragged to the very room of the Committee of Public Safety, from which he'd once held absolute power. There, he was laid out on a table, a living spectacle for his captors to mock and jeer at, his agonizing wound crudely bandaged but left untreated. The next afternoon, the death carts arrived. Robespierre was loaded on, along with 21 of his allies. The journey to the guillotine was a masterclass in public humiliation. The same crowds that had once cheered him now spat and screamed insults. At the scaffold, one final indignity was waiting. As the executioner prepared him for the blade, he roughly ripped off the bandage, holding his jaw together. Eyewitnesses said Robespierre let out an animalistic scream of agony, the last sound he would ever make, which was cut short by the fall of the blade. Over the next 2 days, more than 80 of his supporters followed him to the guillotine in one of the largest mass executions of the Revolution. The fall of Maximilien Robespierre was as swift as it was brutal. In the end, the man who silenced thousands with the guillotine was himself silenced by a shattered jaw, unable to speak a single word at his own execution. His death brought an immediate end to the reign of terror and kicked off the Thermidorian reaction, a period that saw the revolution back away from radicalism and toward a more conservative government. Robespierre remains one of history's great, terrifying contradictions. The idealist who became a tyrant, the defender of liberty who became an executioner, and the revolutionary who was ultimately devoured by his own revolution. His story is a chilling warning of how the noble quest for a perfect society can lead to a very real hell, and how the line between virtue and terror can be as thin as the edge of a guillotine blade. If you found this exploration of history's dark corners compelling, consider subscribing and liking this video. Let us know in the comments which historical figure's final hours you'd like to see uncovered next. Thank you for watching.